Greetings and welcome to the Shadow Court. I am JudgeSpektre, here with a very special edition of the Shadow Court. The Highlander franchise, as we know it, is essentially over with a planned remake of the original, which will likely spawn new sequels if it's successful. As such, I felt it only appropriate to give my thoughts on the Highlander franchise. I look back to the original 1986 Highlander film, as it's become something of a cult classic, and in truth, it's a pretty decent science fiction film. Not outstanding, but pretty good. It's one of those films, after watching it now, I can clearly see that, at least to me, the villain of the film really stole the show. Clancy Brown played a fantastic Kurgan character. I mean, he was incredibly insane, psychotic, and a complete lunatic. As I said in my source review, he's really deserving of being on a top list of villains because he was just that good. The film was good, bottom line. Now, looking back on its sequel, Highlander 2: The Quickening, if you had asked me about a year ago or even a few months ago what I thought of the film, I would have said it was a trash, garbage film that begged for the apocalypse. And in truth, my opinion hasn't changed quite that much, but looking back now, I can sympathize a bit more than I could at first, since I've done some research and I found out that I think as I've read, the inflation in Argentina at the time caused the company or whoever was financing the film to take control of it and basically make the film that they thought would make the most money, which is the reason for the contradictions to the original story. I also heard the director tried to have his name changed to Alan Smithy because he was so disappointed with the project, and he reportedly left 15 minutes into the theatrical premiere of it. And even Christopher Lambert, after seeing the rewrote script, tried to pull out of the project. So, if the film had been allowed to have been made the way it should have been, it probably would have been better, but bottom line, I hate it, but I hate it a little bit less now. And Highlander 3, The Sorcerer, or Highlander the Final Dimension, it's got a bunch of different titles. It's one of those films that it's really been largely forgotten. It acts as a standalone sequel to the first film. It ignores the second one as just a standalone sequel. It's a strange kind of film, one of those where it's not quite good enough to praise and it's not quite bad enough to truly bash it. I mean, Highlander 2 is still talked about today as being one of the worst films of all time. But I never hear much about Highlander 3 being either really good or really bad. It's more or less just there. And Highlander the series was the reboot for the franchise after the failure of Highlander 2. And it was a series that truly captured the essence of what it meant to be immortal. It succeeded on pretty much everything it said it would. It had great sword fights, emotional stories, great historically accurate flashbacks, memorable characters. This is one of the few series of the time that truly delivered on everything that it promised. It ran for 6 seasons, although the 6th season was a lame disappointment that really never should have happened. Yeah, bottom line, I think the series really should have ended after 5, but the 5th season ended on a cliffhanger, so they ended up taking it forward for another season. Now, Highlander the series wrapped up in 1998, to the best of my recollection, and it was followed by a spin-off featuring Elizabeth Grayson, one of the reoccurring characters from the series, in her own series, Highlander the Raven. I confess that I've never seen one episode of this series, so I can't really give you a great opinion on it, but from what I've heard, it was a cop drama where some of the criminals would occasionally be immortals and sometimes they wouldn't. Overall, I've seen that the series isn't hated and it's not loved. It's one of those series that's sort of something you wouldn't expect from Highlander. It only lasted 1 season and it was pretty much forgotten about pretty quickly. And after The Raven, 2000, Highlander Endgame was released in theaters. The film did not do very well, but what it did do is it bridged everything together and merged the series together with the actor from the first film, Christopher Lambert, Connor MacLeod. And it established Adrian Paul Duncan MacLeod as the Highlander by killing off Christopher Lambert's character. And looking back, I can understand why they would do something like this. Lambert was really starting to show his age, and it was becoming clear that he wouldn't be able to hold the part down much longer, so I can kind of understand why they would want to give it on to someone else. But Adrian Paul was a strange choice because from what I've read, he really didn't want to play the Duncan MacLeod character anymore after season 5 of the series. So it was a strange choice to give it to him, but that's what they did. Overall, this is a very controversial film for the reasons of killing off Lambert's character. It's loved by some, hated by some, and overall, I'm about halfway on it myself. What would Adrian Paul do with the series? I mean, the franchise now. It would be about 7 years before we would get our answer. Highlander the Source was released on the Sci-Fi Channel in 2007 and then went straight to DVD. The only Highlander film never to go directly into theaters. And for good reason. You know you sunk pretty low when your film is debuting on the Sci-Fi Channel. And I'm not going to say anything truly as much bad about this film because I've already covered it in my Source review, so I'll just say this. The legacy of the Source will be that it drove a dagger so deep into the heart of Highlander that the only way the series could possibly survive would be to wipe the slate clean and do a remake. And after seeing the Source, I was pretty depressed. Then I heard that the franchise was picked up by somebody else and that 2 writers that worked on the Iron Man film would be writing the script for the new Highlander film. And if nothing else, this news has given me something that I have not had after seeing the Source, and that's hope. Hope and optimism. And really, there's no crime in hoping, is there? So, I have to think now, will Highlander rise from the ashes like the Phoenix and become a great series again? At this point, I'd probably bet against it happening, but I'm not going to draw any conclusions. I'm going to go see the film, and trust me, if it fails to deliver, you'll hear about it.